immigrants. They came over and settled in Hermann, Missouri. Now that's 70 miles west of St. Louis. And they settled along the Missouri River. It reminded them a lot like their native Rhineland. And so they felt at home there. They started growing grapes, making wine, and they were doing real well. By the turn of the century, the early 1900s, they were producing over 1.5 million gallons of wine a year. They were the second largest winery in the United States, and they were the third largest winery in the world. So not too bad. They won awards internationally. Now, something happened to all this success, and it completely destroyed the wine industry. Anyone know what that was? Prohibition. When that happened, they came in and they tore up all their barrels. They, you're asking him if he remembered it? They tore up all their barrels, they pulled up their vineyards and they burned them. And they even went so far as to make them pour out any wine they had in storage. So these people were not real happy. They had to find a different way to make their living. So what they did was they started growing mushrooms. Now this worked okay. They used their underground cellars for that. But let me tell y'all something, it wasn't as much fun to sample mushrooms as it was to sample wine. I think this group will agree with me here. Now, the winery was reopened in 1965, and it was purchased by Jim and Betty Hill. They decided that they would try and gain back some prestige that Missouri had lost. Along with their 4 children, that's what they've done. Now, the main winery in Hermann is where the base is. Well, it's where most of the bottling goes on. Now, we do bottle Spumantis here, and we work with a lot of limited production wines. So you can see that we're not as full-fledged as they are. The second winery is just north of there, and it's in a little town called New Florence. Now, they specialize in Missouri Champagne. So that's the 3 wineries there. Any questions so far? Okay, we're going to start this little film. It's only about 9 minutes long. If you need to leave the room for any reason, feel free to. We opened in 1986 here in Branson, excuse me, and we're more or less an experimental winery. We specialize in limited productions of wines. We do a lot of research down here, and we work a lot of things by just trial and error. It's kind of interesting at times. You never know what something's like until you taste it and try it. There's some things I'm going to show you on display here, and don't worry, y'all haven't been on vacation that long. It's not Christmas, but we're doing a brochure for Christmas because we're extending our season until December this year. So right here we have the press and the crusher. Now both these items were owned by the great-grandfather of the Hells, and they used the crusher. They put all the clusters of grapes in there on top, crush them up, and get some of the juice out, but not all of it. So then they would have to put it in the wine press. The wine press would squeeze the grape, and the remaining juice would come out the bottom, and the seeds and the skins would stay down along that ring. Now, both those items right there were a real big improvement over stomping those grapes with their feet. That was not always a real fun job. Ran into a lot of hard work, too. These barrels behind me were wine casks, they're sometimes called, are over 160 years old. Now the reason why they didn't get destroyed during Prohibition was because they were taken off to St. Louis, over to the monasteries, and they used them for their communion wines, also for ceremonial purposes. Now we don't use these anymore today, and there's a couple reasons for that. The main reason is that if you stored wine in there, it would come out tasting real musty. Because the barrels are so old, they're musty and would flavor the wine that way. It's kind of hard to sell over 1,000 gallons of wine that doesn't taste good. So we don't do that. The second reason why we don't use these barrels is because they're real hard to clean out. Someone had to scrub them down before you could put a new batch of wine in there. And the only 2 openings into the barrel, the first one is right here, this little door, that's how they got in. The other opening's on top, and it's about this size right here. This is its plug. That was for the light bulb to be dropped down in. significantly larger. Well, he told us that once you get in the barrel, you've got all those cleaning solutions mixing around in there. And then you get those fumes going from the wine that's been absorbed in that wood confined area. There's not a lot of ventilation out of those two openings there. He said you just get so woozy and lightheaded, you just kind of float back out. And you don't have to worry about it. Y'all don't be afraid to laugh. I mean, whether it's that funny or not. Because, I remember who laughs and who doesn't. And I'll just tell you this. I serve your wine at the end. Just keep that in mind. What we use to store and ferment the majority of our wines is stainless steel barrels. They're a lot easier to maneuver. These things are real hard to get moved around. The stainless steel barrel's main advantage is the fact that it doesn't add nor does it detract from the flavor of your wine. It has no taste. And so most of your sweet wines will be stored in stainless steel. Now we still barrel ferment wines. And the barrels that are lined up over there are about 55-gallon American oak barrels. Those contain Seyval. It's a very dry white wine. And it's going to age in one of those barrels for about 9 to 12 months. In that time, little devices that you see along the top there are just fermentation blocks. Those let the gases escape so that the barrels don't explode under all that pressure. We do have a Seyval that we did in stainless steel, and it has a real fruity taste. You can really see the difference that the barrel will make on a wine. They also have different types of woods that they use too. Any questions? We don't have to label every day, and so this works out real well. It'll do 25 to 30 labels in a minute and a half. That's working pretty fast. The only problem is you've got to have someone real coordinated to run it, because you've got to pick up your bottle, put it in, set it down, and you've got to keep that going, because you think of handling 25 bottles in a minute and a half, you're moving on. You don't want to go to the sampling bar before you start to label. That's for sure. But your bottle, you just set your bottle in here. Wait till we can see. We bottle spumantes. Now spumantes are sparkling wine. That means they have added carbonation. Real similar to your champagne. They're real bubbly and fizzy, but they're not as dry. They're real sweet. We start out with a semi-sweet juice, and they're contained in those transportation barrels. They send those down to us from our main winery in Hermit. Those are about 500 to 600 pounds there. It's elevated up on a little forklift, and then it's siphoned down into this tank right here. This is a cooling tank. It has coils in it like a refrigerator, and it chills your wine down to about 37 degrees. You have to have it real good and cold if you're going to have the carbonation added to it, so it will absorb it. Now the carbonation and the wine all come together. 70 pounds per square inch of constant pressure is added. It's all compressed, and it sends it up through these 3 units. You have your bottles sitting in there, and it takes about 4 to 6 minutes to fill one of your bottles. After it's filled, then all the excess will recycle back into the cooling tank. Your bottle, Jim just does everything by hand, so he'll pull out the bottle, and he'll stick his thumb over the bottle real quick so that it doesn't start spewing out. Then he comes over and grabs a little plastic cork. This is just your typical mushroom cork, as they call them. Starts that down in there by hand, and then he takes this highly technical tool, but we just call it a rubber mallet, pounds that cork down in there. You have a corked bottle of wine now. It's not all we do to it, though. We have to add a safety wire. This just fits over the top in the grooves and holds that cork on there, because once your wine warms up, all your gases expand, and there goes your cork. Right off of there. Then he puts on a piece of foil, cover all that wire and plastic up and make it look a little better. Sticks it in the crimping machine. That just gives it 4 creases, and the second slot gives it the twist that you see. Real simple process. This is a finished product of a Spumante blush. We also have a golden Spumante. We'll similar to an Osti salami, if you've ever had one of those. Are there any questions? Germany right now. That's been aging for about a year and a half. But we have more time to work with the small batches and more time to do research than they